think it'd be appropriate for you, as one of those that was involved in the very, very early activity associated with a missile problem, that is the intelligence aspects of that, to address a little bit the requirements and the reason for the establishment of the center as we know it today.
Actually, rockets today are a very mundane subject. Everybody knows what ICBMs are and SLBMs. But back in the mid-50s, this was a matter of very high intelligence priority for the country. I don't mean that it was any more important then than it is today, but because it was new and different and we had limited intelligence sources on the subject of missile development, it was a very intense requirement. One of the problems in the late and early 60s that the intelligence community faced was that we had a great many people in the act with good ideas and good actions in many cases, collecting radar data, optical data, telemetry data. We didn't have any focus. For example, a common problem was that there'd be a missile shoot, an ICBM shoot. And it would take days and days for some of the agencies interested in the output of the collected intelligence to get that data. They'd get different stories about what fired. They weren't even sure what happened to all the telemetry tape. There was no...
The collection effort wasn't orchestrated.
That's a good word. It wasn't orchestrated. There were even a few occasions where we may have missed data by failure to be alert at some of the collection
have everything focused at the right time.
And there was a lot of duplication of processing of information. One of the results of this situation was that Secretary McNamara set up a government commission in 1963 to look over the whole Defense Department effort against missile information, not just SIGINT, but optics, radar, and the rest, to see if we could make some improvements in the collection and reporting of the information. I was one of the members, junior members of the commission. The Deputy Director of Science and Technology for DI was on it.
Jack O'Gara.
Mr. Jack O'Gara, now passed away, was on it. A number of other senior officials. We reviewed all the work of the Defense Department here at NSA, at DIA, at FTD, at the Army's MIA work.
Navy activity.
Navy activity,
yep.
Navy technical intelligence people. See what we could do to improve the total production of intelligence on the missile program. One of a number of actions, and there were a number of actions, but one recommendation was to create this organization called the Defense Special Missile and Astronautics Center. And to make it a joint center between the NSA, who controlled the SIGINT resources, both reporting and collection, and the DIA, which could control the other Defense Department assets, the radars, the optics collection, and to have this joint center orchestrate, do two things really, to orchestrate the collection, to make sure we got all the data about the missile or space test, and secondly, to write a single intelligence report quickly after the event, within about 3 days, so that all of the people who would later be interested in studying that shot and all the other associated events or shoots of that same missile could know that the event had occurred and that we did collect telemetry and which telemetry we did collect. So they had two roles. One, a quick reporting role, and two,
not just telemetry, but all of the other...
All of the other, the radar data,
radar,
the
optical...
The whole thing. And they recommended this to the Secretary, and he issued a directive directing the Director of NSA and DIA to jointly set this up. The Commission finished its work at the end of '63, and I believe the center was set up in 1964, probably in the spring.
Actually set up formally in April of '64.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting, too, Charlie, that directive, which was published now, 16 years ago, a little over 16 years ago, has never been changed. And it's not because it hasn't received attention. It's because you guys did your homework pretty well back then, because, in fact, the things that the directive asked the NSA and DIA to do, jointly do, still meets the mark. And so there's been no reason to change it, and it's still doing a very fine job in that regard.
Well, you know, that sort of raises a question. I'd been out of the missile business some months. I was in the NSA organization, one of the managers, the system now retired, in charge of the NSA work, which included SIGINT on missile and space. And I think I was going to use a euphemism. To say we were given a new job. I think we kind of got fired out of that job, to be frank about it, because we hired too darn many telemetry analysts and engineers, and I think the cryptanalysts managers thought we were getting too much of the frosting on the cake, but hiring all these smart engineers to study rockets. Anyway, and I got a new job all of a sudden in the early 60s, and then when DEFSMAC was formed, the director of production at that time here in NSA asked me to go back into the missile business and head up the new DEFSMAC, which I seized the opportunity immediately because I enjoyed the problem solving of trying to figure out in advance when and what they were going to shoot, and after they did, what it was they shot. But the cultural relations with the rest of the community in the early days of DEFSMAC were very interesting. CIA had formed its own missile center a few months before, in fact about a year before. And so there was great opportunity for these two missile centers, one at CIA and one here, to fight. Everybody likes to be the first one to get a correct report out, kind of a one-upsmanship in reporting. And CIA also had, I think they would have admitted, they also had an aim to be the top and best intelligence reporter on important, in a sense, sexy missile shoots. Here we created an organization inside the NSA that involved people from DIA. The director of DEFSMAC reported to two bosses, still does today, according to the director, both the director of NSA and the director of DIA. And we had the privilege of doing the first juicy, quick report on a very sexy intelligence subject. The creation of this unit, which everybody knows in the reporting business, in signal intelligence, the fun end of the game is to be able to put a correct, fast, important SIGINT product out. And here was DEFSMAC, who was given that privilege, and yet the NSA group, who did the term research and the real deep and technical understanding of the SIGINT on the missile and space program, was sitting aside, also in NSA, and had to support this center, who headed that group and did an extraordinarily good job, was very forbearing and a good manager in this respect. He brought the full weight of his research and term reporting people in order to support our intelligence analysts in DEFSMAC to write those first hot stories. Now, that took a lot of forbearance. It was something very new to have a foreign organization, newly created, what the hell are we doing with these DI guys in the building, part of DEFSMAC, and to let us do the reporting on the first scoop, you know, the rocket just blew up, or here's a brand new spaceship, we don't know what it is, type reports. And yet these research people, was one of them, he headed the reporting group in the NSA section. A lot of forbearance on their part, and yet they worked with this system and supported it 100% over the years.
Very definitely, they made it a success.
In fact, after you followed on in my boots as the director of DEFSMAC, and then later on became the head of the W organization in NSA in charge of that research, you continued that support into the DEFSMAC
right.
to do the reporting. And I always thought that took a lot of real understanding on the part of not just NSA management, but all the analysts who work in NSA to support this center. And I give them credit for a lot of the success.
I do too, Charlie.
In addition, one of the greatest assets in terms of the work of the center has been the fact that both the NSA and the DIA over the years have continued to maintain very high-quality people in both operations, the men who man the 24-hour watches, in the intelligence shop, and in the management of the center. I don't want to play favorites by mentioning people. My memory isn't that good, but I used to say one of the ingredients for success in the reporting area of DEFSMAC was what I called the three of the original DIA men who are still associated with the intelligence reporting aspect.
Yes.
Not that there aren't other people in there who don't have long continuity, but
there are several.
Walk in here, I suspect, on a new missile shoot of some importance to the government in the middle of the night, as I used to years ago, and probably find one of those three had been called in to assist the watch, the operations people, in writing the story by the next morning.
That's right.
The people aspect of the center has been very impressive over the years to me. In fact, I wouldn't go so far as to say that the National Signal, the NSOC, National SIG Operations Center, is patterned after some, but certainly the NSA learned some of the problems of the kind of operations that are run on the national level in our NSOC from watching the evolution and problems of SMAC. I know the design of the center, I walked in there a month or so ago, the basic equipment that we put in there in 1964, the arrangement inside there, the teletype, they've added new computer, but I think the basic arrangement for operations is still the same as was put in there.
The character of the center has changed. Well, I won't say the character has changed. It's still doing the same job, basic job that it did when it was first established. The things that it works with, though, are much more complicated.
Oh, the firing's come closer together. There are many, many more types of missiles.
The center has moved, along with the rest of the intelligence community, into the overhead world very heavily. Overhead satellite systems, and but basically still doing the same job that it was established to do back in 1964.
And actually, is it true that the time that you took Vice President Hubert Humphrey to the center, that your description of what the center did, everybody knows that the late Hubert Humphrey was a wonderful orator and loved to talk, but I understand it's true that your briefing was done so well when you took him through the center that he couldn't possibly interrupt.
Well, it wasn't quite that. We were very proud to have Mr. Humphrey and I were hosting him that day. Very proud to have him come through. He did interrupt one time, and he'd say, "Mr. Khrushchev told me we were going to do that. Told me they were going to do that." That's about the only time. So, yeah.
I remember that day very well because that was the day you quit smoking. And anybody could give a briefing on the day you quit smoking after 20 years is a pretty good brief. Max, it sure has been a fun thing to sit here with you this morning and talk to you about the work of the DEFSMAC. I've really enjoyed it, and I appreciate the opportunity.